Hello, everyone, and welcome to Africa Fire Mission's weekly virtual training session. My name is Mike. I'm the programs director here at Africa Fire Mission. We're so excited that you took time out of your busy schedules to join us for today's training. Today, we're joined by a good friend, Brian Andersen. Brian has been doing a lot of volunteer work for Africa Fire Mission. He's traveled with it. You've seen him, familiar face for those of you that are regulars here. Excited for him to be here today and talk a little bit about leadership and command. But before we get started with that, let me just touch on a couple administrative notes. Um, if you stick around for at least 70% of today's training, which is usually about 40 or 45 minutes, uh, we'll get you a certificate of participation for today's training. Um, if you get cut off or you can't stick around for the whole time there, and you'd still like to earn that certificate of participation, you can go to our website, www.africafire.mission.org, and under the resources tab, training materials, you can find a link to our Google Drive where there'll be a posting of this video, the recording from today's training. If you go there, watch the video, answer a couple questions, show us that you watched that video and you learned something, I'll get you that certificate of participation as well. Lots of other great resources on there. I encourage you to go check that out. Also, if you haven't checked out our YouTube channel, please do that. Africa Fire Mission on YouTube. If you'd subscribe, we'd really appreciate that. You can find a lot of other content there as well. When we get finished with our training here at the top of the hour, um, we're going to transition over into our tea time, which is usually hosted by Jose, our fire safety officer here at Africa Fire Mission. He's having a little bit of network trouble at the moment, so we hope to see him join us a little bit later. But tea time is a great time. You can ask some questions about today's training. You can network with firefighters throughout Africa. We've got guys from all over here. So please, if you have the time in the bundles, invite you to stick around for that as well. At this point in time, without further ado, I'm going to pass things over to my friend Brian to get us started with today's training.
All right. Thank you, Chief. So, my name is Brian Andersen. I'm a volunteer firefighter for Belva Fire and Rescue in Belva, North Dakota. Been in the fire service for 20 years now. Have a master's degree of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, along with the list of other certifications. My full-time job is I'm a safety coordinator in the oil fields in North Dakota, but I also oversee several other states, including Wyoming, down into Denver and Utah area, then up into Alaska. So pretty busy with full time and volunteer work. So to
You nipped your mute button there, Brian.
all right, sorry about that. Today we're going to talk about leadership topics and command on the fire scene. For those of you who've been to my classes, you know that I like to give you guys something that you can work on at a company level. I'm a big believer that we can be doing more company level training. It's not hard. If you guys are sitting around the kitchen table on a rainy day, bored or whatever, you can do some sort of company level training. So I'm going to give you some resources, or at least one resource here throughout this, where you guys can go and visit it and do some research about firefighter fatalities, why they happen. We see over and over again the same mistakes are repeated anytime there's fatalities in the fire service. And that's what we're going to talk about today and how to overcome that, along with leadership. Fireground leadership is an enormous topic, like it says there, very beginning, right? Um, So this training is to help you be a leader in the fire service. But understand that it's just an hour long training, not even that. Leadership never ends, whether it be on the call or in the station, or even when you're out in public by yourself. If you're representing the fire department in any way, just with a t-shirt on or whatever, you're going to be part of that leadership. So what is leadership and what is a leader? We need to start there in order to move forward. A leader is someone that can influence someone else, good and bad. If like I am a leader right now because I'm influencing everyone on this class, so that's a part of that's a leader, right? I'm influence you. Um, there's obviously good and bad leadership, and we want to strive for the good leadership. Now, the good leadership is someone who does it with integrity, whose motives for doing it are sincere, and stuff like that. But today we're going to focus more on the fireground side of it. Like I said, because that's where we're killing the firefighters, right? So we want to focus on that, trying to control the fireground scene and the communication that's happening. So NIOSH, National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, they've identified the 5 key factors on firefighter fatalities in the United States. So what NIOSH does is when there's a firefighter fatality, they'll send a team of people in. That team of people will go through what happened, go through the incident scene. They'll go through all the SOPs. They'll go through all the training logs, and they'll really dive into what happened. Why did this firefighter die? And then they'll issue a report. And in these reports, there's almost always an improper risk assessment done, a poor size up. I know Africa Fire Mission has done these classes virtually and in person. Because I know when I was in Kenya, we did an in-person one where how do you conduct a proper size up? We're not going to get into that today, but we need to go back and check on those classes and get trained on those classes. A lack of incident command is going to be your second one. Um, you get to the scene and it's a free for all. Everyone does whatever they want. That's how you kill people. Um, I've taught my the candle theory class on this before, and part of that class, I can show you what happens when smoke is fuel, right? So if you introduce oxygen in form of ventilation to a fire when you're not ready for it, you can kill firefighters. And that's just a simple command decision on when to do ventilation, right? It needs to be coordinated. Another one is lack of accountability. You have to know where your guys are, where your girls are, and you got to know, are they safe? Do they need help? Do you have adequate resources? And how do you figure that out? Is communication. So the opposite of that is inadequate communication. That leads to poor um, poor performance on almost every fire. When you conduct an after action review, whether it be at a fire or a training event, one of the top things that comes up on every single one of them is we can communicate better, but we never dive into detail on that when we do those after action reviews. Like, what does that mean? What do you mean communicate better? Where was the weakness and where was the strength? Um, so we're going to talk a lot about that today on how to improve your communication, and also a lack of SOGs, SOPs, and the failure to follow the established SOGs. So a lot of people are going with SOGs. There are SOP is a standard operating procedure, means you do it this way every single time. An SOG is a standard operating guideline. It means you do it this way every time unless you have a reason not to. Okay. So if I deviate from an SOG, I need to be able to explain what that deviation was and why I did it. So I'm going to exit this for a second here. If you just Google firefighter fatality investigation and prevention program, um, FFFIPP, um, you'll get this website here, and this website has every firefighter fatality that's been investigated. Um, and it goes way back. I mean, there's 111. They don't investigate every single one necessarily, because there's been more than that, but it goes back 10, 12, 14 years. Um, Here's one. I'm just going to pick one. A career firefighter killed in structural collapse while conducting a fire attack. So then you can click on it, and it gives you the PDF of what happened, a summary of what happened. Usually has diagram layouts of what the building was like, or whatever the case might be. Contributing factors: personnel staffing, professional development for acting fire officers. It gives you some of these factors that contributed to the fatality. Then it gives you recommendations. Okay, ensure a formal written guidance and leadership oversight is available. Um, when completing a risk benefit analysis, evaluate the speed at which an incident is developing. Just we don't have to go through all of them, but this is a very good company level training. If you can pull this up anytime, you're just sitting around the living room or whatever at the firehouse, and you want to get your team together to do a training, go over this and talk about what would you have done in this situation. They obviously had this fire here. What would you have done? And knowing the outcome, how can you improve your department, right? We can learn from others' misfortunes. Pretty simple. So once again, um, just Google this firefighter fatality investigation and prevention program, and you have great company level training right here. Just pick one and go over it. Okay, so we went through that. So the goal of this firefighter fatality program is to reduce the line of duty deaths on the fire ground. If they this NIOSH 5, or those five factors that we just went over, they identified those 5 factors. Now, if we can work on those 5 factors, we'll have we should see a reduction in firefighter fatalities, because we see these factors pop up in almost every single one of them. So, oh, come on. There we go. Modern structure fires have become very complex. In Africa, you have a vast variety of what your fuel loads are, what your building constructions are, um, how many people live in that house, or that the school. You have egress issues in schools and malls and stuff. So we see that it's a huge challenge, especially for the African Fire Service, where you can't just be like, I'm going to respond to this one type of fire. What this is going to lead to is flashover rates, or flashover times, that are going to be pretty fast compared to what you might think it is. Um, because you might go to like this brick building um, or whatever. You might think you have a lot of time where you can put out this fire, but in reality, the couches, the furniture, everything that's brought into that building is going to have a heat release rate that's so great that can flash over very quick. Um, and what we're seeing in the North American Fire Service is overall we have fewer fires. We're getting to these fires quicker, so that we're having fewer large scale fires. The conflagrations that they used to have in, oh no, there we go. The conflagrations we used to have in all the big cities where they'd burn down 4, 5, 16 blocks of the city in one fire. That doesn't really happen anymore. So we're experiencing these fires, large scale fires, fewer, which is great. Um, but coupled with that is our retention in the fire service, at least in North America. I don't know about Africa, has sucked really. Um, we've lost a whole bunch of experienced firefighters. We get new firefighters in on the fire service and they don't stay anymore. Um, so we have a less experienced fire service with fewer fires to even gain that experience. And now we also couple that with modern fuel loads, and we really can have an issue. And this is why we keep seeing firefighter fatalities repeat themselves. It's the same fatality, just a different location, right? So let's start getting into the nuts and the bolts. What is the difference between a division and a group? Terminology is very important when it comes to incident command. Um, a division is like a location, okay? So if you have roof operations, your roof can be a division. If you have a big wildland fire, your division might be the North Division, and then you can use a major landmark as a separating line, like a river or something like. So North Division, that's a certain location. Now a group is going to be your task, right? So you might have a division that does the roof ops, but then a group of people that's doing the task of the ventilation, and that'd be your group. And that leads us to what's the definition of division or group supervisor? A division or group supervisor is the eyes or the ears for the incident command um, in a particular hazard zone. When we talk about command, remember, we we don't want to overwhelm our command, so we have a span of control. So the incident command will be in charge of 3 to 5 of these division or group supervisors. Okay. Um, some people disagree with me. Some people say your incident command and your supervisors need to be at an incident command vehicle. Excuse me. Sorry about that. The for me, if you're a division or group supervisor, you need to be out there looking at the fire, looking at the hazard, and reporting back to your incident commander what you're seeing and what you need. Okay. It is a pretty hands-on position. Maybe not like putting out fire hands-on, but you're going to see that. So the goal of these supervisors is to not have such a top-heavy command system. The goal would be you have your incident commander. Your incident commander has a few of these supervisors. Like I said, around 3 or 5 of these supervisors that are looking at a certain group, a certain mission in the fire service. And all of this will create a communication channel to improve that NIOSH stat, right? you'll have great communication from the incident commander on down. What we see is the more efficient you are on setting up this command system that we're learning about today, the less resources you'll actually use to put out that fire. Instead of having every fire truck in the city come to this fire, you're going to know, like, I need this truck to do this mission, right? So it eliminates people being exposed to an injury to begin with. It opens up a great line of communication. And this is just the first step, right? We have the incident commander. We're adding in some supervisors there. You know, you might have a supervisor for your interior crews and a supervisor for your ventilation crew or your roof team or whatever. Or if you're on a major bushfire, you might have your incident commander, and then maybe have one for the north side of the river, one for the south side of the river, stuff like that. So you're starting to break in where your communication channels are going to be. So, excuse me, I need to get a drink here. So we're not doing ICS and command just to check boxes and creating positions. There is an actual reason behind why we need to start having these supervisors be put into place and not just let one commander control everything. The one commander can't see everything about a building fire, right? And one training I did once was I was handed a picture. This is a building fire. Make every decision you can based on this one picture. And it's like, are you going in interior? Are you going to put people on the roof? Whatever. Okay. And the point was, if you're just one person, you can't get anything other than just that one picture. Like, sure, if an incident commander gets on scene of a structure fire, they might be able to run around the building and do a good 360. But realistically, at least in the early stages of a fire, you know, you get 2 minutes past your initial 360, your conditions have changed greatly. So you are going to be doing a 360 every 2 or 3 minutes just to keep on top of what's actually going on? No, you're going to have these supervisors put into place. And your supervisor for roof ops is going to be like, hey, this is what I have, and this is the resources I need. And your supervisor for your interior is going to say, hey, this is the condition my crews are seeing inside, and this is the resources I need. Now, as the incident commander, you're being fed a greater picture, and then you can adequately ask for more resources. You can assign the resources you have more efficiently, and like I said, that communication is the key on keeping firefighters safe. So, proactive use of the incident command system, a lot of benefits. Your span of control, I think we've talked about that greatly. Improves accountability. That way, you know, there's been times in North America, at least, where incident commanders didn't even know certain fire trucks were on the scene, and that's just not acceptable, right? As an incident commander, you, especially if you get like a large scale operation like what we're seeing in California right now, you don't know every fire truck on scene, but at least you know how to, you know, you have the resources to figure out which fire trucks are on scene, right? It is a check-in process, a checkout process. very structured if you want to go fight those fires right now. So it's very high accountability. But for a small department like I'm on, to have a fire truck on scene and the incident commander be like, "Oh, when did you guys get here?" That's just not okay. It improves communication. Like I said, we're starting, instead of having just a small one shot picture, we're starting to see a big picture, and that communication is starting to flow from the bottom up and from the top down. It's just a wave in the ocean, right? Going back and forth. And this improves safety, and it matches the intensity of the incident. What does that mean? If you have a large scale operation like what's going on in California right now, some of the bushfires happen in Africa right now, you're going to have a large incident command system with multiple supervisors and divisions, right? But if you have a car fire, you're not going to need all these divisions. You're going to have an incident commander, safety officer, and then people put out the fire. So it just matches the size of what your objectives are. So on the fire ground, there's 3 levels of operations: strategic, tactical, and task. On the strategic level, we can do offensive, a defensive, or a combination. So an offensive attack, which means, we're committed, we're going all in, we're going to risk a lot to save a lot, as they say. It's just it's firefighters doing firefighter stuff, right? This is what we like. This is what we live for. This is the adrenaline pumping stuff, right? A defensive, a strategic level at a defensive level would be you're just spraying water through the windows, hoping to knock out the fire, protecting the exposures. It's not the glamorous fire that we all love. Sometimes it's needed. It's still this is another thing where some people disagree with me, and we're fine. We can still be friends. To me, if you're a defensive level, you can still be attack, right? It's still defensive attack. And the reason why we want to be a defensive attack is for fire investigating standpoints. I was a fire marshal for 5 years, and as fire inspector before that, so I don't know how many years of investigations that I actually did. But even on a defensive level attack, you're burning that evidence into place. A lot of arsonists think that the evidence just burns away with the fire, and that's not true. It burns it into place. We can study the electrical system, we can study all this other stuff to help determine why this fire started. So if you are doing defensive attack, get a fog pattern through the window. That steam will put out that fire. Most of our buildings are small enough that you can shoot the hose stream across the whole building, right? So if it's unsafe to go in, I understand that, but it can still be a defensive attack model. And it really helps the fire investigators down the line. And then you have the combination. This is what we see in small town America a lot, is your combination. Your initial people arrive, and sometimes they even bring the grass trucks. We do this in where I live a lot during inclement weather, because we have snow all the time and icy roads. Our grass trucks can get there safer and quicker. So we'll go with our grass trucks. We'll spray water through the windows in a fog pattern. And as we're doing that, someone's doing a size up, doing all the we're going to talk about that in a little, or next slide actually. But they're doing all the little tasks, Then when the engine gets on scene, we switch from that defensive attack. We grab the main lines off the engine and we go inside and put the fire out. So you can do an offensive, defensive, or combination. That combination is sometimes called transitional attack. You start off defensive, get set up, and then go in and hit it. So this is the stuff you need to think about when you first get on scene. Like I said, if there's bad roads, we'll send our grass trucks out ahead of us just to do that defensive attack with the grass truck. Um, and the people that get on scene first, this is what they're looking for. What rescues do we have? What exposures do we have? Can we confine the fire, but just by shutting doors, right? Get the fire extinguished. Get the fire extinguished. And then overhaul ventilation and salvage operations, right? So this is what you need to think about at incident command level. This is something you'll think about on every call. You don't have to do one. You don't have to do every single one on every call, but you should at least consider it. Some more fireground operations, um, command decisions, searching rooms, pulling hoses, cutting hose, cover the furniture. How are we going to do that? Now, it's not the incident commander's job to tell you to go into the room, do a right-handed search, and check for victims. What the incident commander should do is tell you, truck 3, you're in charge of search and rescue. That's the incident commander's job. As soon as the incident commander says, truck 3, you're in charge of search and rescue, excuse me, yeah, then that takes that task and puts it onto your truck company. Now, if you have a group supervisor for search and rescue, that supervisor might get in more to the tactics on how you're going to perform the search and rescue. That supervisor might tell you, search the second story first because it's 2 a.m. and more than likely your victims are sleeping, right? If you're a supervisor, you might tell an engine company, hey, pull a 2.5-inch hose off for this one instead of the 1 3/4. You might start making more of the tactical decisions there. But if you are an incident commander and you're telling your engine company how to hook to a fire hydrant, that means you're micromanaging. So we're gonna speed it up here, otherwise I can talk for 3 hours. So apologize for that. But so span of control. This is what we're talking about, or we've talked about several times now. As an incident commander, you don't want more than 5. Some people say up to 7 people under your command directly reporting to you. If you have 30 people direct reporting to you, you're going to miss something. 90% of Mayday calls are said over the radio and missed by the incident commander, or missed by everyone. So that's why we need to have this strong leadership on these calls. 90% of Maydays are missed when a Mayday call goes over the radio. That means almost all Maydays have to be self-rescue. So we need to be training on how to do self-rescues during Mayday too, right? As mentioned, the span of control, NIOSH, it's one of the top 5 for NIOSH. It's going to improve your accountability and your communications. So, and I'm going to give this. I'm going to give this to Mike, obviously, so you guys can go back and review these slides here. But accountability. So I have different feelings about all this. Computers, technologies, tags, and boards are not in and of themselves an accountability system. They are tools to help the accountability. So we see a lot as an incident commander, there's some sort of tag board that's in the engine. Everyone puts their tag on it, and the incident commander says, I have a count for all my people. Here's all their tags. That's not accountability. That's just a tool to help with the accountability. But as an accountability function, we need to break that down into our span of control also. So your supervisors need to keep account of your crew integrity, right? If you go out with an engine of 4 people, those 4 people need to be together throughout the duration of the fire. Okay. And then the group supervisor, he's going to be in charge of 5 engines. So now he keeps in charge of those 5 engines, and each of those 5 engines keep in charge of the 4 people on their engine. And then the incident commander will be in charge of 3 group supervisors who are in charge of 5 engines, who are in charge of 4 people. You see how we broke it down to integrity, crew integrity along the whole way. So we have PAR is a personal accountability report. This is going to be at your tactical level. And then a CAR is your crew accountability report. Your incident commander will be able to go to his or her supervisors and say, give me a CAR. And what that means is give me a report on your crews. So your roof supervisor would be like, my 5 engines are accounted for, and then your North Division supervisor will be like, my 5 engines are accounted for. And that's how you keep account for everyone. So, there should be a video in here. Yeah. Let's see if this works here. This would be easier than reading the slides. So what we're going to see here, this is going to just be a simple PAR. It shows you how to do a PAR. And then each PAR, each of the supervisors will tell the incident commander that they're okay. Okay, so you heard this supervisor said ladder 4, are you PAR? Yes. Ladder 3, are you PAR? Yes. Rescue 1, are you PAR? Yes.
We don't have your sound with that, Brian.
And then you heard him go outside and say Division 1 is PAR. So that told he, you notice he had 3 units within his division. I don't know how many divisions are on this scene, but that's how you do it. Is he did a PAR of his 3 units, and then he goes and tells the incident commander that that he is PAR, good to go. So, how often should you do a PAR? This is really, I don't know. It depends, right? If you have a high hazard situation, you should be doing it more often. But at the same time, you do need to put the fire out, right? And if you do a PAR every 5 minutes, you're slowing down the progress in which you're putting those fire out. I definitely wouldn't go any more than 20 minutes between PARs, because if you have a trapped firefighter and you go 20 minutes between a PAR, their air pack's going to be almost out by the time you realize they're trapped, right? 5 minutes might be too fast, so it's really up for debate. Now, anytime you transition, you should do a PAR. So what does that mean? If the fire is put out and you're transitioning into an overhaul phase, you should do a par, right? If you're at a wildland fire and you get the fire contained, you can stop, take a breather, do a par, and then go mop up the fire afterwards, and then do a par at the end, right? So this is something we see all the time: the criticisms of using incident command system, and this is house fires, car fires, um, just any type of call we go on, even hazmat calls. It never works this way. I've been doing it this way for 50 years, and I've never had an incident. That's the one that bothers me. I've been doing it this way for 50 years, and we've never had an incident. Well, if you go back to that NIOSH website that I showed you guys earlier, you'll see that there's incidents that are happening. And these incidents repeat themselves. Now, I know they're happening here in the United States because we document it, we research it, and we tell each other about it. I would put money on, if you look at a firefighter fatality in Africa, they're going to have the same issues. This isn't an isolated thing to the United States. If we expand this research model worldwide, you'll see that the firefighters are passing away for the same reasons. So, well, I also hear house fires are not that complex. We don't need a big command system. So, why are we still killing people in house fires if they're not that complex? We lost over 2,000 civilians in house fires last year in the United States. And you're telling me a house fire is not complex? But I hear this, and you would think that we don't hear this. We hear house fires are our bread and butter fire. As a fire department, we should just know how to put out house fires. Despite all the advances we have, and Rick, remember Rick is rapid intervention crew. Despite all the advances we have in PPE, better building codes, better fire codes, better fire equipment. I mean, our new engine probably costs $700,000 nowadays, I imagine. Why are we still having 2,000 civilians and 100 firefighters die every year because of house fires? House fires are very complex still, and they're getting more complex. House fires are over too soon. We don't need the ICS. They're saying by the time you set up the ICS, that the house fire can just be put out. And I'm a big believer that you do have to put water on the fire. We are firefighters. We have to get the fire put out. But setting up an incident command system doesn't take time. We're talking seconds, right? And it should be part of your SOGs. It should be labeled the first arriving engine. The driver is going to pump the fire truck. You have the two firefighters in the back going to start the attack. And your officer up front is going to be incident commander. And then when a second engine gets on scene, those roles kind of transition, you know. Like your SOGs, your incident command, and who your leadership is going to be on the fire ground should already be set up in an SOG. So the discussion about, well, do we need an incident commander? Do we need a safety officer? Do we need a roof chief or whatever you want to call them? All that discussion has already happened before the fire. So when it's time for the fire, it's in your SOGs, and it's just seamless setting it up. And also, well, before I get to that, going back to this bottom point, proactive factoring of the NIOSH 5 into your incident command system and training will prevent a mayday. Like I said, 90% of maydays are missed by the incident commander. Rick is a reactive thing, you know. We put the two firefighters there. For a long time, our Rick team were the two old firefighters that, you know, they have bad backs and they don't really want to do it anymore, but they're still willing to. So we put them on Rick and they hand out water bottles. That was horrible. Now we're at least to the point where Rick is going to be our top guys, because if something happens, they're going to have to go into a very dangerous situation to get our firefighters out. So, but also, if if we are just in a habit of setting it up for our small incidents, when we have a major incident, whether it be a terrorist attack, a hurricane, a flood, some of these incidents that last weeks and weeks, then we're just used to incident command. We scale it up. It's going to be a much bigger incident command system than we've ever seen, but we're not trying to learn as we're going through some of those traumatic calls. This takes the hands off works. There's too many bosses. That's another excuse for using an incident or not using an incident command system. I understand what you're saying with that, but we need the leadership on the fire ground. We already went through the NIOSH 5, and it repeats itself. So if you're going to say we don't have enough we don't have enough people to add a division chief, I just ask, okay, which firefighter are you willing to kill off because you didn't want to have a division chief? Is it okay if this person dies because you didn't hear their mayday call? Because you didn't do a proper par or car, someone's going to die today. And as soon as you turn it into that perspective, it really hits home, because we're all friends, right? And if we're seeing through hundreds of reports that say we just need more incident commanders and more leadership on the fire ground to improve communication, it seems like something simple we can do. You don't need to set up a group or division for just one company. And that would be correct. You don't need a group or division for just one single company, but it's about span of control, and if you use it for the small stuff, it works better on the big things. Even at a car accident, say you have an engine in a rescue truck at the accident, doing your extrication and controlling oil or whatever runoff there is, and then you have a few trucks doing traffic control or blocking traffic or whatever. You can set up two divisions, and it's just more for practice at that point. One person could probably handle it because that's only 4 fire trucks. But by setting up two divisions, you're just getting into the habit. This is a box checking firefighting. So some people say we don't need to do incident command because it's just checking a box, and that's not how we firefighters. And I disagree with that, because when you look at all those NIOSH reports, they say, had we done this, many of our firefighters and our fellow friends would still be alive, because it improves your communications, and it improves accountability. So are we checking a box? No. Now, for those of you who don't know where the ICS really came from, it actually did come from President Bush, an executive order after 9/11. After our 9/11 terrorist attacks in the United States, President Bush signed an executive order mandating incident command. And a lot of people say, well, it's just a presidential mandate. Well, yes, that's true. But at the same time, since 2001, we've killed thousands of firefighters in the United States, a lot of which could have been saved by doing this. So I don't see the need for fighting the system, right? We just need to go to work. Like I've said, I am all for start putting water on the fire. I understand that, but with your if you have good SOGs and you use this all the time, instant command doesn't slow you down. Setting up an instant command doesn't slow you down at all. You just get into such a habit of instant command that it's second nature. Oops. Sorry. One size does not fit all. That's correct, but our incident command system is designed to grow and contract based on the call. Okay. Um, and like I said, we're talking a lot about leadership in this class, not necessarily checking the boxes. And uh, this isn't a ICS 100 type class, right? Um, but the leadership in this is we want to do what's best for our people and for our community. And in order to do that, we need that clear line of communication, that clear accountability, and one person just can't do it all. Oh, too many. We tried using ICS before and it didn't work. Never let your failures dictate your future. And this is just a good life lesson just all day long, right? Never let your failures dictate your futures. We make mistakes. The first time you use incident command, it doesn't work right. That's fine. The more you use it, the more it just gets ingrained into your leadership of your department. Um, your leadership could be using it for everything, right? Say you wanted to plan a fundraiser. So you'd have an incident commander of the fundraiser, and you might have one person in charge of the food, that's their division, one person in charge of the marketing, that'd be their division, right? You can even break it down into fundraisers. And that way you can just practice and practice and practice. So there's a whole bunch of excuses on why not to use incident command. But I'm gonna stop it here. The next slide's kind of transitions a little bit, but I want to leave a little bit of time for questioning. So, a whole bunch of excuses on why not to use incident command. Oops, not that button. Where are you at? But what we saw is the lack of leadership on a fairground has killed, you know, hundreds, if not thousands, of firefighters in the United States since 9/11 2001. It's well researched, it's well documented that if we can improve our accountability and improve our communication, then we can be safe on a fireground. We can save more lives. And that's the whole point of why we do what we do. So, like I said, I wanted to leave a few minutes for questions. Anyone, you can go ahead and throw your questions in the comments here if you have any, and try to answer them before we wrap up here.
Okay. If you got a question, you can drop it in the chat, use the raise hand feature, or just go ahead and unmute yourself. And the floor is open.
And I'm going to put this, the website to this firefighter fatality into the chat. Like I said, it's great company level training. You can just you can do it at any time. You're just hanging out, even around supper time, pulling these out. It's also great training for your rookies because it gives them all the information and it starts their brain being like, hey, we do this, the same way. Um, it's not like real technical knowledge. So
There you go, Brian. What happens when a junior officer understands ICS better than his supervisor?
Yeah, that makes their supervisor learn ICS real quick. If your rookies are being like, "Hey, why don't we use this?" Then they're going, "Oh, I guess we need to get better at this." Um, yeah, I'll give Mike the slides. And how do you hand them out, Mike? Do you just attach them to this, or?
So the Google Drive link that I supplied there is where they'll be able to find a recording and where they can take this training again or pass it on. In there, there'll be a folder labeled additional materials, and we'll drop a PDF version of the slides in there. And then they can also find those just by going to our website, www.africafire.mission.org. Go to the resources. Underneath the resources, select training materials. There you'll find a bunch of stuff. Under there, click on the 2025 virtual trainings, and that'll take you to that Google Drive as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, I really encourage everyone to go check out the slides. I cut it off early because to respect everyone's times. I know some people it's getting towards the end of their shift and in the evening and stuff. You want to spend supper with your family, so I'm not going to hold people up if you know. So go finish the slides. If you know me, I like to talk, and obviously I don't just read the slides. So there's a whole bunch of words on those slides, and I just they're for me it's just remembering what I'm going to talk about. So okay,
Thank you, Brian. I think at this moment, I'm going to sort of stop the formal portion of our training, but we want to stick around for a little bit more discussion. Let me wrap things up on the formal portion with a big thank you to Brian. Um, Great guy. Uh, Good to see you, and thanks for coming out and doing a training. You guys will see more of Brian throughout the year. He's one of those guys we can always count on to come and teach some classes for us. Um, Thank you then also to all of you. I understand that, you're taking your time, maybe some of you at work, but some of you are on your free time using your bundles to try to educate yourselves and get better at how you serve your community, whether that be the public or whether that be, you're working for a private company or something. But, we don't take for granted the fact that you guys are out there trying to better yourselves. So thank you all for joining us. We've got plenty of seats in here. So if you know someone that may benefit from our training, I would encourage you to share that registration link uh, and get them signed up. We've got plenty of seats. Everyone's welcome. So thanks again to everybody. We hope to see you all again next week.